tie in and the most secure way to tie these Zonker strips in is... Welcome to episode 6 of the Tying Toolbox. Today we're going to talk about Zonkers. Zonkers are an incredibly useful material for any type of fly you're tying. You can use them in dry flies as dubbing, which we'll cover in the next episode. You'll use them as bodies or strips. You can use them as different parts, like even tying saltwater flies. It's cool to use these Zonkers as claws, different things like that. But today is going to teach you about the different types of Zonkers you might see in a shop and how to use them and tie them in the best. So, starting out, we're going to have a tail. You can use it kind of as a body or as a tail. We're just going to show you the tail today. We're going to teach you how to wrap Zonker to create a body. So, starting off, we've got 3 different types of Zonker strips here that I have not yet prepped, so they're looking a little crazy. We have a standard or just regular size Zonker strip. They do make a larger size called the Magnum size Zonker strip. And as you can see here, the Magnum is quite a bit thicker on the leather. So creates more of a movement, adds a little more body and bulk than the standard one. We also have the difference, what is called a cross-cut Zonker strip. So you can see this one actually goes the opposite way. So where this Zonker strip has been cut going down the hair, this one has been cut going across. So it creates a better wrapping Zonker than a standard straight cut Zonker. So the cross cut Zonker is just a little different shape. First thing you want to do when you're working with any Zonker strip is prep it. So here you have the loon underfur comb. We're going to be able to hold the front of this and run this comb down the Zonker strip. That really helps pull out all the loose fibers and hairs that may not be connected anymore, and really help just align those fibers so that they're all going in the same direction. It really makes it a lot easier for us to be able to get these tied in. This one, as we can see, is pretty ragged as it came out of the package. But look at how different it looks once you get it all combed and all those fibers are going the right way. Makes a huge difference in how these Zonkers look and the usability of them. So there's a huge difference just by using this comb. We can see how much of those fibers came out that weren't connected anymore. So peeling out those spare fibers really makes it a lot easier for us to be able to tie these in. So I'm going to show you how to tie in this Zonker as a tail. We already have our thread at the rear of the hook. One of the most useful tools that we have is called a bodkin. And we're going to use this to really help us be able to expose the leather to tie this in. If you just try to tie in on top of the hair, you don't get a really good grip on the Zonker strip, and it's liable to kind of spin on you. So the easiest way to tie in and the most secure way to tie these Zonker strips in is to grab that Zonker strip with your left hand, take your bodkin, which is essentially just a needle that is connected to a little grip, and we're going to run that right up against the leather to peel the hair one way and expose that leather underneath. You may have to run the bodkin multiple times along that leather to make sure you get all the fibers going one way. Once you've got them opened up, the best thing to do is just to grab your fingers here and lick them. And that really helps pull those fibers towards the front that exposes that leather, makes it much easier to work with. If you try to grab the hair with the thread, it's really easy for these things to spin, but this leather gives it a really good spot for that thread to grip and hold onto, and almost can cut into the leather a little bit to help hold it. So your first wrap that you want to do is going to be a pretty loose over the top of it to make sure that you situate that thread perfectly on that leather, right where you want it to be tied in, and then you're going to pull that tight towards you to help lock it in. Now we're going to be able to come in and make a couple more thread wraps. And again, remember, we want to wrap a little bit backwards, a little bit forwards. We don't want to put consecutive stacking wraps right on top of each other to lock these things in. So now that we've got that tied in, we can come in with our scissors and trim that out. I like to just pull that up pretty hard and just give that a snip. Now, we want to make sure that we go in and finish covering the rest of the exposed leather. The rest of those thread wraps are really going to help lock in that tail. So there we have it. There is a fly tail. So these tails are extremely loose and flexible, and they're incredibly good because they swim really, really well in the water. But because they are so flexible, one of the issues with a zonker tail is that it's liable to foul, which means it'll wrap around the hook like that as you're fishing it. So one of the best ways to stop that from happening is we're using a little bit of glue. There's obviously some other ways to do it. I personally have found that glue is the easiest. Here I've got some Zap-A-Gap, but really any brush-on glue applicator is going to be great for it. So we're going to take just a little bit of our glue here. With our left hand, we're going to make sure that we don't have any of these hair fibers exposed. We don't want to get any glue on this hair. We want them to pretty much only wind up on the leather. So we're just going to pull those down to make sure that they're out of the way as much as possible. Keep tension on it with our left hand here so that we can keep holding this leather backwards. And just run a little bit of glue up and down this leather right here. So that little bit of extra stiffness that it's going to add right there is really going to help keep this tail stiff and sticking straight rearwards. Makes it a lot harder for that tail to foul. So we can now see, as this is drying a little bit more, if I relax the tension on it, we can see it's got a hinge point right there at the edge of that where I glued. So what that's going to do is really keep a lot of the same movement above the leather and at the very rear of the leather, not allow it to bend as easily to the left or right to foul around the hook. Once we finally got all that done, again, I like to take that comb, the very last thing, and run it rearwards. And again, that just helps align all of those fibers just in case it got a little messed up before we put it in the box. And a really good thing to keep around in one of your bags as well, so that you can comb out flies that get a little fouled while you're fishing them. These combs are great. So the next thing to teach you to tie in is to tie in some zonker that is cross-cut for a body. So yet again, we want to make sure that we're tying in with the leather and not the hairs. So we're going to start that leather. We're going to wrap our thread forwards, hook in our bobbin cradle. Again, I'm using a rotary vise so that we can spin this leather. But if you're not using a rotary vise, just wrap your thread all the way forwards and then you can pass that leather around. The big advantage of the rotary vise is that you can see what's going on the entire time. So now we've got our zonker wrapped all the way to the front. Just to show you guys how to create this body here. We can use our bodkin again to cut through the hair to get down to the leather. We want to make sure that we're really locking in by just grabbing this leather. These can be pretty difficult to get locked in right. So make that wrap and just come straight over the top. Make sure that we're grabbing that leather nice and tight. Couple good thread wraps, continuing that leather pattern. So we want the leather to keep coming this way and not pull the leather parallel with the hook and then tie it off. So we want the leather to keep acting like it's coming this way so that the leather behind it and those wraps keep kind of that same shape. Next, we're going to take our scissors and come in and trim it out. And then I like to make sure that I lock down the exposed leather really good. What that'll do is really help lock that in so that it's not moving around a lot and it won't start to unspin. Next, again, these things are a really big tool once you get these zonkers wrapped. You can come in and brush them backwards to help free up any of the fibers or hairs that might have gotten trapped as you wrapped. That was a good rhyme. So, keeping these brushes around is really nice to be able to make these flies look good before you're finished with them and put them in your box. From here, you'd add in your head, whatever other technique you were doing with your fly, you'd be done. You come in and whip finish. But there we go. We can add these zonkers as a body. With the cross cut, it makes it a lot easier to wrap than wrapping a standard regular zonker. Thanks for watching episode 6. Episode 7 coming up is going to be one of the larger episodes we're going to do. It's going to teach you a lot of different and new skills, and it's all about dubbing. going to help us use dubbing from all the way from dry flies to streamers. So stay tuned. We hope you enjoy.